There is a question that has followed human beings since the beginning of recorded time. It shows up in the oldest texts we have, in the Vedas of ancient India, in the Psalms of the Hebrew Bible, in the poetry of the Sufi mystics, in the writings of the Christian contemplatives. The question is not complicated. It is, in fact, the simplest question a person can ask. That question is, who am I? Not who are you professionally, not what role you play in your family, your culture, your religion, but at the very bottom of it all, stripped of every label, every memory, every belief about yourself, what is actually there? Rupert Spira, a British philosopher and teacher in the non-dual tradition, has spent decades sitting with this question, and in a short but extraordinarily dense book called The Heart of Prayer, he arrives at an answer that is both ancient and quietly radical, an answer that does not merely describe prayer, but dissolves the very framework most of us bring to it. Today we are walking through the core ideas of this book, unhurried, step by step. And by the end, my hope is that you will look at the word prayer and the word God and even the word I quite differently than when we began. Let us start at the beginning. What is prayer? Most of us, whether we come from a religious background or not, carry a fairly consistent image. Prayer is speaking to God. It is a request, a confession, a thank you, a communication directed upward or outward toward a being that is somehow above and beyond us. It is an act performed by a person addressed to a deity across a gap. Rupert Spira does not dismiss this understanding. He actually honors it, as we will see later, but he does ask us to look more carefully, to ask not just what prayer is doing, but who is doing it and to whom. His answer is startling in its simplicity. He writes, "Prayer is simply to remain as the I am before the words I am, to abide as that, simply to be." Read that again slowly. Before you say, "I am tired," before you say, "I am hopeful," or "I am a sinner," or "I am seeking God," before any of those qualifications are added, there is something prior, a bare, unqualified sense of simply existing, not existing as something, just existing, the raw fact of being here, aware, present. Spira calls this the I am, and he says that resting quietly in that, not directing it anywhere, not trying to improve it, not making it into a request, is, in the deepest sense, what prayer actually is. This is a radical shift. Most of us approach prayer the way we approach most things in life, as an action directed toward an external goal. We move our attention outward, towards someone or something we want to reach. Spira is saying that authentic prayer moves in the opposite direction, not outward, but inward and downward, to the very root of our own existence. He uses a vivid analogy to explain what this looks like. He describes a human being as God's being clothed in human experience. Picture it this way. There is a naked being, infinite, boundless, not limited to any particular shape or name. That being then wraps itself in human attributes, a body, a personality, a history, a set of beliefs, a name. What we call a person is this infinite being wearing all of those things simultaneously, like layers of clothing. When we live our ordinary lives, entirely absorbed in those layers, our thoughts, our plans, our identities, our problems, the naked being underneath is hidden. It is still there, it never goes anywhere, but it is covered. When God undresses, Spira writes, it reveals as being. Clothing itself in name and form is the activity of creation. Undressing is prayer. So prayer, in this understanding, is not the act of putting something on, not adding more devotion, more effort, more words, more ritual. It's the act of taking things off, stripping away layer after layer of personal identity until what remains is just the simple, bare fact of being. This is what the great Christian mystics called the practice of the presence of God. Not thinking about God, not working toward God, but removing everything that obscures God's presence, which is already, always here.
Now let us take that one step further, because Spira does not just redefine prayer, he redefines God. Across the world's great religious and spiritual traditions, the ultimate reality, whatever lies at the source and ground of everything, has been given countless names. In the Hindu tradition, Brahman; in Buddhism, Buddha nature or pure awareness; in the Taoist tradition, the Tao; in Islam, Allah; in Christianity, God or the Father; in the Sufi tradition, the Beloved. Each tradition, each culture reaching towards the same unreachable horizon and giving it a different name. Spira makes a subtle but important observation about all of these names. To name something, you have to stand apart from it. You observe it from a distance, point at it, and attach a label, which means that any name we give to something is already, built into its very structure, an act of separation. That is God over there, and I am here, naming it. But what if God is not over there? What if the ultimate reality is not an object to be pointed at from a distance, but is precisely the one doing the pointing? What if the ultimate reality is not something we observe, but the very awareness doing all the observing? If that is true, then God cannot be named in the ordinary way, because to name it, we would have to step outside of it, and we cannot step outside of the ground of our own being. So what name would God give itself if it were to name itself from the inside? Spira's answer, I. I is God's name in each of us, he writes. It is the name that whatever knows itself gives to itself. Think about what the word I actually points to. Not I, the person with this history. Not I, the body sitting in this chair. Strip all of that away and ask, what does I refer to before any of those descriptions are added? It refers to the most immediate, most undeniable fact available to you. The fact that there is awareness here, that something is present and knowing, that experience is happening, and there is a here where it is happening. That sense, that bare I, does not belong to you as an individual any more than the space inside a room belongs to the four walls. The walls give the space a particular shape, a particular address, but the space itself is not made of wall stuff. It is just space, appearing to be confined. The I that you are, in your most essential nature, is like that. It appears to be confined to this particular body, this particular history, this particular name. But its nature, pure awareness, simple being, is not made of those things. It is what those things appear in. Spira describes this beautifully when he writes, I is the hidden thread that runs throughout our life. Without it, experience would be a chaos of thoughts, images, and feelings. Experience is always one thing, not 10,000 things. Experience borrows its oneness from the singularity of I. Every experience you have ever had, every joy, every loss, every ordinary Tuesday, every extraordinary moment of clarity or grief, all of it has appeared to this one aware presence, this I that does not change, even as everything within it changes endlessly. That constancy, Spira says, is not a human achievement. It is not something we cultivate or develop. It is the nature of what we already are. And to recognize it, even for a moment, even imperfectly, is to touch the hem, as it were, of what every tradition has been pointing at under all its different names. There is one final framework in this book that I want to share with you, because I think it is one of the most useful things Spira offers. He describes two movements in the spiritual life, which he calls the journey to God and the journey in God.
The journey to God is inward. It is the movement from I am something, I am this person, this body, this personality, toward I am nothing. Nothing here does not mean emptiness in a bleak or nihilistic sense. It means not a thing among other things, pure, unqualified being before any particular identity is added to it. This is the way of what theologians have called the via negativa, the path of negation, of stripping away. It is contemplative prayer in the classical sense, turning away from thoughts and perceptions and sinking into the depths of simple being. The journey in God is outward. Once the individual has recognized their being as God's being, once the journey to God comes to its natural end in that recognition, a second movement begins. From I am nothing, the movement turns back toward I am everything. The world, which was previously experienced as a veil, something that obscured reality, pulled attention away from God, now is seen as a revelation. The same being that was discovered in the silence of inner prayer is now recognized as the substance of everything. Every face, every tree, every street city, every star, the infinite being wearing 10,000 different coats. For one who knows their being as God's being, the world loses its concealing power and becomes a revealing power, Spira writes. This is the way of what theologians call the via positiva, the path of affirmation, of love, of praise. And it is why so many of the great contemplators, people who have gone the most deeply inward, also display the most extraordinary tenderness toward the world. They are not retreating from life, they are returning to it with their eyes finally open. And the instruction for living this, Spira's final word, is breathtaking in its simplicity. With your mind, know 10,000 things, but with your heart, feel only one reality. The Heart of Prayer is a short book. You could read it in an afternoon, but it is not a book that finishes with the last page. It poses a question, the oldest question, the most personal question, and then gently, patiently, without force or performance, it shows you where to look for the answer. Not in theology, not in tradition, not in practice or effort or attainment, but here, in the one thing that has been present through every single moment of your life without interruption. The simple, irreducible fact of being, the bare I, before any words come. Rupert Spira does not ask you to believe anything. He asks only that you look, really look, without agenda, without the noise of seeking. Just for a moment, let the looking turn back toward the looker, and see what is there. If this resonated with you, the full book is well worth reading. Spira writes with a quality of attention that itself begins to feel like the thing he is describing. If you enjoyed today's summary, please do like and subscribe, and leave a comment below. We read every one, and it helps more than you know. Stay blessed and have a great life.